Hey everyone, welcome back to Wicked Deeds. We're your hosts. I'm Brittany.
And I'm John.
And today we'll be discussing a case where a 45-year-old mother went missing while running errands after getting off a night shift at work. Days after she was last seen, her car was found in what seems like a deliberately placed location. But outside of this, authorities struggled to gather more information surrounding her disappearance. But as time went on and details about the missing woman's personal life began to surface, investigators found themselves working new leads and back on track to uncovering what may have happened. Today's case is about the disappearance of Diane Wolf. Diane Louise Wolf met her second husband Merle in 1980 after she'd started a job at Hanover Foods in Hanover, Pennsylvania. When she first began her employment there, she was already married and had 2 children, Holly and Corey. But roughly 2 years after the start of her employment at Hanover Foods, her first husband passed away from a heart attack. After that tragedy, her and Merle started to talk and began a friendly relationship that soon blossomed into a romantic one. The two were married on September 14, 1985, and lived together with their 2 kids in a home located at 19 Sycamore Lane in Hanover, Pennsylvania. So we already know that Diane worked with Merle at Hanover Foods as that's where she met him, but she also worked there with her mother, Shirley. Diane typically worked the night shift, with her hours being from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., with her mother and husband working second shift, which was from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Diane's title or position was laborer, so I think this was kind of like a warehouse job, not an in-store grocery worker kind of job. So on the night of Thursday, January 28, 1999, Diane was scheduled to work and arrived there shortly before 11 p.m., and she relieved her mother, as I guess the two worked on the same machine at this particular Hanover Foods location. Now, it's been reported that sometime in the early morning hours, Diane had called and spoken with her husband before she was set to leave for the day. It's unclear exactly what time this call was made, but it has been reported that Diane told Merle she was planning to do her grocery shopping at some point that morning. I've also seen it reported that she had the same Friday plans every week, and she would go grocery shopping as well as go to a tanning appointment. Now, at this point, it's Friday, January 29th, 1999, and Diane finished her shift shortly before 7 a.m., and she was about to walk out when a coworker stopped her to give her some Avon beauty products she'd bought previously. It's reported that Diane told this Avon sales friend of hers that she would pay for the items later on that night, so just based on that, it seems as though she was supposed to be working again that night, meaning the 29th now into the 30th at 11 p.m. Diane then took her new beauty products and clocked out at the same time as another coworker. She then hopped into her car and made the 11-minute drive home to her house on Sycamore Lane. The reporting on this has differed a little bit on if anyone was at home at this time when she got there, but in most articles on Diane's case, at least in the early reporting on it, it says that she got home, no one was there, and she supposedly dropped off her lunchbox and these Avon beauty products and left them on the kitchen counter. However, there is one article that I found that stated her husband was home when she got there, but all of my other sources don't substantiate this fact, so it's unclear if this was new information that came out later or just kind of misreporting. But either way, after Diane made this quick stop at home, she got back into her car and made the 8-minute drive from her house to All First Bank, which was located at 150 Dart Drive in Hanover, Pennsylvania. She's reportedly seen on surveillance footage depositing $300 at the drive-through ATM at approximately 7:33 a.m. on that Friday morning, January 29th. That's only about 30 minutes after she'd left work that morning.
Did you say it was a 12-minute drive or 12-mile drive to get home?
Yeah, 11-minute.
11-minute, okay.
So it was quick. It said, she left a little bit before 7 o'clock, so then you would assume takes her roughly 10, 12 minutes, considering red lights and traffic, whatever. Gets home, drops off her stuff, heads out, makes another 8 to 10-minute drive to the bank, again, accounting for traffic. It all makes sense. It all adds up, the timeline.
Yeah. So the plan was to leave work at Hanover Foods, drop her stuff off at home, and then go grocery shopping somewhere else?
So Hanover Foods, where she worked, was like a warehouse. It wasn't a grocery store.
So it wasn't a warehouse attached to a grocery store.
It doesn't seem that way.
So she couldn't do her grocery shopping at work?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
This footage of her at the bank would be the very last sighting of Diane Wolf. Now, it appears as though Diane wasn't reported missing right away. From what I've gathered, at least 36 hours passed before an official missing persons report would be filed for her. The Evening Sun reported, quote, her husband Merle became concerned when a friend she was supposed to meet that night called their home asking where Wolf was, end quote. But then it's also reported that her mother and co-workers were the ones to become concerned about her when she hadn't shown up for work that night as scheduled. As I mentioned before, Diane always relieved her mother at 11 p.m. when she would come in for her shift as they worked on the same machine.
Outside of it being kind of weird that her husband didn't report anything earlier than 36 hours, I also find it odd, too, that the mother or the coworkers didn't contact Merle at home and say, hey, where's Diane? She didn't show up for work.
Well, you have to think. So the way the whole timeline seems to be is that she's last seen Friday morning, and then you would assume Merle probably had to go into work at 3 o'clock. So I'm wondering if everyone at work, so maybe he was included in the coworkers description.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that.
So if he's at work, if mom's at work, and then they're expecting for her to come in at 11 o'clock, the one thing that stood out to me, though, that I thought was weird is something that I would think would be strange if it were us, obviously, with you working third shift. When the hell is this woman sleeping?
Yeah, right.
So if she was supposed to go grocery shopping after, and then she had a tanning appointment, but supposedly that was in the evening. So if that's like what her normal Friday routine was, wouldn't you think like she'd get out of work? She just worked 8 hours the night before. So she's probably been up since like 9 or 10 o'clock the night before, works all night, leaves work, goes to the bank, is going to go grocery shopping. She'd probably come home and nap, have her evening tanning appointment, and then maybe take another nap before work.
Probably.
So it just seemed really strange to me. Like, is no one kind of worried? I mean, obviously her mom wouldn't know, but...
How old were the kids?
They were grown. Her daughter was in the military. She left home at like 18, and her son was only like 2 years younger than the daughter at the time. So they were like 20 and 22.
So the only people in the house were her and Merle.
Yeah.
So if Merle, did you say he worked the first shift?
Second. So 3 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah, that's strange then. If she was going out to the bank 7:30, then going to get groceries, she's going to be coming back while Merle is still there to unload the groceries. So for her not to be seen, for him to know that she was going to get the groceries and to be expecting her back at a certain time, unless he had his own stuff that he was out doing and then he was going to go to work right from whatever, activity he was taking part in, or he was only going to stop in again briefly. And not to get too far into the weeds, because I'm sure there's still a lot more to go into this, but I think it's odd that it took 36 hours to contact police or to report her missing.
Yeah, I agree. You have to think they're at least worried by 11 o'clock that night. That's not 36 hours. She's reported missing the next night. So let's just keep going here.
All right.
There are several differences I've seen reported regarding exactly when this missing persons report was filed, but it seems as though the most widely confirmed is Saturday night, June 30th, approximately a day and a half after Diane was last seen after she left work the morning of the 29th. It's also been stated that her family is who reports her missing, but it's unclear if that means her husband, her mom, siblings. But either way, once the Conewago Township PD was alerted of Diane's absence, they were dispatched to the Wolf home where they asked Merle about the last time he'd seen his wife. He said he hadn't seen her for quite some time, but it's entirely unclear what quite some time quantifies to. If he was in fact home like that one article mentioned, then at this point, he hadn't seen his wife for at least 36 hours. Her family has stated that this was completely unlike Diane and she would just never not come home. Bonnie Leister, Diane's sister, told the Evening Sun, quote, she never before left town without telling anybody. We know Diane wouldn't have done this on her own, end quote.
Like I was saying just a couple minutes ago, that I find it odd that somebody didn't report her missing for 36 hours, and now that the police are going and they're interviewing Merle, and he has this weird, I haven't seen her for quite some time, Lowell.
Yeah, it's true.
But
it's a little strange.
I feel like that's kind of a dismissive answer in a way. I haven't seen her in quite some time. It's like, no, I haven't seen her since yesterday morning.
Well, he wouldn't have seen her from even before that, though.
No, he would have saw her when she came home to drop off.
If he was home. You don't know for sure
if he was
that's
home,
accurate.
right.
Yeah. I mean, they talked.
In only one article, it said that he was there.
Yeah, and it was a more recent article. So I'm like, okay, was this new information that came out later? Or was this like someone just did an update article and that piece was misconstrued? Because all the stuff in like the first at least 5 to 10 years, all of it says that when she got home, she was alone, dropped the stuff off, and then went to the bank.
Or if Merle is a suspect or a person of interest in his wife's disappearance, as time goes on, is he adding more to his story or is he changing his story or anything like that?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe on all those previous articles, it was never specifically mentioned that he was home or that he wasn't home.
Mm-hmm.
But then now, as time goes on, and maybe it's a more recent article, like you said, maybe he's like, no, I was home and I did see her at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So he seems kind of aloof for his wife to be missing for a minimum of 36 hours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, it's reported that after authorities were made aware of the 45-year-old mother's disappearance, they walked around the neighborhood and talked to anyone they could that might have seen something over the past 2 days that could hopefully lead them to finding her. It seems as though authorities didn't gather anything of value from this, though. And for the next day and a half or so, Diane still hadn't tried to get in contact with her family, and there was no further information regarding her whereabouts. That is, until that following Monday morning, February 1st, 1999, when there was a development in her case. Bonnie, Diane's sister, worked at a local Wise Market store located at 1424 Baltimore Street in Hanover, Pennsylvania. When she pulled into the parking lot that morning, Bonnie saw her sister's car, a 1994 green Pontiac Grand Prix, just sitting there in the back of the parking lot. Bonnie stated, quote, "I ran over to it. It was frozen over," end quote. So the car contained some very interesting clues. First of all, the car was unfortunately empty and Diane was still nowhere to be found at this point. The car was also locked. However, Diane's cell phone was still inside the car, but her purse was missing. And not only that, but the outside of the car had a, quote, "light dusty coating," as if the car had been on a dirt road or in a quarry, end quote. And apparently the car had also been recently washed before it was found, so it seemed to be considered unusual that it had this dusty coating on it because of that. Obviously, as soon as Bonnie found the abandoned vehicle, she alerted investigators to let them know of what she'd found, and they came to the scene. However, apparently, they just did a quick glance over of the car and the scene and told Bonnie to just drive the car home. Didn't take it in, didn't do any processing of it, nothing.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, a little bit.
Doesn't bode well for the investigation. I don't know if this is how it was reported or anything, but the light coating of dust, that could have been from a quarry or something like that. You think maybe investigators would want to take a sample of that. That way, you could compare it to dirt that would be specifically found in the quarry. Like around here, you have like lime quarries and stuff like that. If it had lime residue or something, that could help lead you in a direction and say, okay, this car was in that area at some point. So to go look over there.
The thing about it, though, is, so I'm telling you this story, obviously knowing everything. And a lot of these things weren't necessarily reported on in the very beginning. And there are things that are reported on later that you find out later. And I think as things progressed here, I don't think that was something that authorities even really paid attention to or noticed when they first looked at this car. So I think they were just like, oh, she's not here. That's kind of weird that her cell phone's here, but take the car home. Like, that's it. Like, that's their protocol, I guess, at the time.
Yeah, I guess that's fine to an extent. But you also want to think that this is now, we're going Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We're going 4 days without seeing this lady, not knowing where she is. Her last confirmed sighting, and I don't even know if police know this at this point, was at the bank through the security cameras.
Yep.
So if you have somebody that hasn't turned up and they're reported missing, at least nowadays, you would think that standard protocol would be to tow that and impound it at the station.
Yeah.
That way you could have it available. Even if you don't process it immediately, you have it available and you can go to it if you need to in the future. But to have her sister just go in it and drive it home contaminates the entire inside of the vehicle. So not good.
No. So along with that, it's also discovered that the car had been there for at least a little bit of time. When employees of the Wise supermarket were later asked if they'd seen the car, it apparently hadn't been there late on Saturday night. So roughly like 10 o'clock, assuming that's when the store was closing. But it was reported that it was seen in the lot around 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. But by this point, we already know that Bonnie found the car on Monday morning, so that's roughly 24 hours after it was first seen in this parking lot.
Which would explain it being frosted over. It was there overnight in the middle of the winter, January and February. So
it's so funny you say that because my next sentence is, and just based on that time frame, the fact that the car was frozen over doesn't really surprise me.
Right.
But like we were saying, it's Pennsylvania. It's the end of January, early February. And I did look up the weather too. The average temperature that day was 31 degrees. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is pretty cold.
Overnight, it's probably going to drop a little cooler too.
Yes, exactly. So it all makes sense. And I do actually have a photo of what her car looked like when it was found. So, John, I'm going to send that to you now. And then for all of our listeners, if you want to take a look and have a visual, it will be on our socials.
Is that a stuffed cat in the back windshield?
It looks like it might be a panda.
Looks like a stuffed cat. But it looks like this picture was taken in a garage or something, though.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure when or where this photo was taken. It was just on a recent article on Diane's case. So I don't know if this was in the early days. I don't know if this was a family member that took the picture. I don't know if it was authorities. So all I know is that this was her car and this was what it looked like at least sometime relatively soon after it was found.
Sure, you can see like the dust and the debris that's on the vehicle, but this is not the state that the vehicle was located in. Like you see a wooden
ladder,
in the background.
Yeah.
So this could have been after the sister drove it back home.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so you don't know for sure, but it seems as though, based on reporting anyway, that this was around that time frame. But again, it's just like it sucks that it's not exactly at the scene where it was found in the Wise Market parking lot, saying like this is exactly as it was as police rolled up on the scene. Right,
but if it was untouched, essentially from the sister taking possession of it and driving it somewhere, and then maybe it's in a garage and it's thawed out, you can really see how thick the dust was on this.
Yeah.
So it does look like you might still be able to process this vehicle after the fact.
Yeah.
Even though it's been contaminated, but you might still be able to gather some evidence from it. And it looks like maybe just from my initial view of it, maybe somebody was behind the vehicle and got pushed onto the trunk.
Yeah,
it looks like there's two handprints, or it looks like where the dust is cleared, where somebody could have been grabbing there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there, yeah. Okay, so before we move forward and continue on with kind of how the investigation's going, I did want to show you a map of where the car was found as well, because I think that's important. So again, another photo that John's going to look up, and if you want to look at it, it will be on our socials as well.
Okay, I have the map.
Okay, so when you're looking at this, the Wise Market store was on Baltimore Street. You can see Baltimore Street's like all the way to the left here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at this map, you can easily tell that you have to go down like cross streets to get into this parking lot, right? Can you tell that from the left-hand side there? Like you see Baltimore Street, and then there's the Verizon and the Coinstar. Like those are all side streets over there. You have to go through those, or you have to go through some sort of other parking lot to get into the Wise Market, right?
Yeah, I see that.
So that's also a big lot, and it was said that her car was towards the back of the lot.
Well, what is considered the back of the lot?
I would assume that it's like kind of over like near where the PNC Bank is, like farthest away from the door is kind of how it's been described. Like it wasn't like her car was right up in one of the first parking spots.
Sure, okay.
Which I wanted to mention too, because there was one other thing that I've seen reported like a lot regarding the car and where it's found in the parking lot. And I'm curious what you think about it. So all of these articles reporting on her case, at least in the early days, were saying that this was totally unlike Diane and that she was the type of person to attempt to find the closest spot to the door and would like drive around the parking lot over and over and over again so she wouldn't have to park super far away. But is that like even relevant? Because at least to me, I don't think Diane is who put this car here.
I think it aids in determining that it wasn't Diane that parked the vehicle. That's really the only thing that it kind of proves. I think by somebody saying, oh, Diane would never park the car here, she would always park near the entrance. It's not saying that why would Diane park it here? It's saying that Diane did not park the car.
Yeah, but then the other thing you have to think about too is, so why is the car put here? This seems very, very, very deliberate to me.
Well, easy exit, I guess?
No. Why is it where the sister works?
I don't know. Why are you saying that?
I mean, what are the odds of everywhere in Pennsylvania, or at least everywhere in Hanover, Pennsylvania, that you could drop this car off. Why is it that you're picking this particular parking lot of this grocery store that Bonnie works at when you have to go and cut across multiple other parking lots to get to it? It's not like you're just dropping it off at some place along the side of the road. This seems deliberate to me.
I mean, it doesn't strike me as deliberate as in somebody's trying to send a message in. I'm going to leave your sister's vehicle at your work.
Not necessarily to send a message, but because they wanted it to be found.
I'm wondering if this is where Diane was going to get groceries and she got abducted from here, and then they brought the vehicle back to where she was abducted. That way it's not somewhere else. It's like, yeah, I picked her up here, I fucking abducted her here, did whatever, and then I just brought it back to where it was, because if somebody was ever tracking her movements and she was supposed to be there, that's like, oh, well, she ended up at the grocery store. Now where do we go from here? Whereas if they found it, miles away somewhere else, maybe it could get tracked more easily as to how it got there, who has ties to that location, who would end up dropping something there versus, a place that she was actually set to go to.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know if this is where she would have gone grocery shopping. I don't know where her regular shopping place was. Like, I know obviously a lot of people have like the place that they like to go to every week. So I see what you're saying there. I definitely do. And all of this stuff is like relatively close proximity. So I kind of marked down like how far Diane's house was to the bank and to the market and to her job and all of that. And everything's pretty much under 10 minutes. Everything's all within like a 3-mile radius.
Well, you got to think, she works at a Hanover Foods. Whatever, it might be a warehouse. It's not a supermarket, so she can't go and buy the groceries there. She lives in Hanover. This Wise grocery store is also in Hanover. Her sister works at Wise grocery store.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't she go to where her sister works? It's like a tie there. Like if you have two grocery stores, both equal distance from wherever, from your house, would you go shopping at the one your sister didn't work at, or would you go shopping at the one your sister did work at?
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying. I think for me, though, the way I was looking at it, and maybe it's just because I know more, is the fact that authorities have said that they do believe this car was placed specifically in this lot and that it's not just a coincidence that this is the parking lot it's in. But I was looking at it along the lines of it was put there because they wanted her family to find it, or they wanted somebody that she knew to find it. I see what you're saying along the lines of maybe this could have been where she was going and that's why it was put here. Again, that coincides with it not being a coincidence. I was just looking at it from a different lens.
Sure. And just because this is what I've pieced together so far and thinking that she was probably coming here to get groceries and that's why the vehicle was brought back here, doesn't mean that it's accurate. And now that you have said that obviously you know more and that authorities have said that they believe that whoever took her or whoever came in possession of her vehicle by whatever means dropped it off here specifically because they wanted a family member to find it. Now I'm starting to think that whoever did this must have been somebody that somewhat cared about her or the family because they want them to be the ones to find it. So now I'm thinking that whoever did this is probably someone that's like close to home type deal.
Yeah, okay. I think we're kind of on the same boat there.
But I'm not saying that I changed my mind and that's what I think. I'm just saying that my first inclination was that the reason it was put back here is because this is where she was abducted from. But if authorities are saying that it was placed here specifically so her family would find it, then now I'm thinking that whoever did this was someone that either cared about her or was close to the family.
Yeah, so they haven't flat out said that. They haven't said like, oh, it was put here because they wanted it to be found by the family, but the words used have been like it's not a coincidence and, that there's a reason why. They haven't said the reason straight out, but we can assume.
Okay, but the reason could also be because she was going here to buy groceries.
Yes,
and she was abducted
exactly.
from this location.
Yep.
So they've never outright said it, and they're only insinuating that it was put back here for a reason. That reason can be
a multitude of things. Yeah. So sometime after the car was found, it's reported that Diane's family searched all over this area, including some woods that were located behind the parking lot of where the car was found. And if you're looking at the map, you can see the spot that I'm talking about. Nothing came of that search, though. Along with searching that area, it's also reported that some local quarries were also searched because of the dirt and the dust that was found on her car. So I did a little bit of sleuthing, and I was able to locate one quarry that was only 6 minutes away from Diane's home and about 20 minutes from where her car was found. I did also add a map of that onto our socials as well. There are other quarries in neighboring towns, which I'm assuming were searched as well if authorities thought it was probable that the car had been there at some point. But even with all these efforts, nothing seemed to pan out, and there were still no further clues or really any indication of where Diane might be. But now that Diane's car had been found, her family was even more certain of the fact that she didn't run off, and there are several pieces of information released that solidify this idea, at least to me. The first being that Diane didn't grab anything to bring with her. She left all of her belongings at home. And we know that she had stopped home after work on the 29th to drop things off, which, I mean, it would seem a little bit strange if you were planning to run away to leave stuff at home rather than take things. Sure, maybe if she wanted to leave, she wouldn't have packed a bag if her husband was in fact there, but again, we don't know if that's a sure thing. If he wasn't home and she made this pit stop, I'd think she probably would grab stuff to bring with her if that was the plan all along. But then again, you have to think she didn't bring her cell phone, she only had her purse, which her family said was yet another thing that was totally unlike her. But the thing that really brings it all home for me are the plans that Diane made before she vanished. Her daughter Holly, who was 22 at the time, was pregnant with twins and she was living down in Virginia. But she'd actually recently made plans to move back up to live with her mother in Pennsylvania, and it's reported that Diane was super excited about this. Diane and Merle even had plans for the next week to head down to Virginia to help Holly make the move back up to Pennsylvania. And along with that, Diane was working on planning Holly's baby shower. She put 2 cribs on layaway for the babies, and she'd even taken a month off of work in the future to help her daughter after she'd given birth. Why would she make all of these plans to just run away?
I already didn't think that she had run away. I mean, she was seen on video at a bank depositing money.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you deposit money if you're going to run away? You'd take it out.
Right, and there was no, documented strife between her and Merle and things like that. Nothing that you spoke of, at least. So it's not like it was a trouble in paradise type thing where she was running away and being with someone else or running away from a bad situation. So it didn't ever cross my mind that that would have been the case.
Well, crossed police's mind because that's kind of what they perceived from the very beginning. And they just thought Diane's a grown woman. She decided to up and leave, whether that be for a long weekend, a vacation, whatever. That was the initial belief, even though they're still kind of doing, we're going to search, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But no matter what, it seemed like at the end of the day, they were like, oh, she's a grown woman. She can leave if she wants to.
Okay. So this is a lady that's working a warehouse job. Her husband died. She's got a second husband. Her kids are older. She drives a Pontiac Grand Prix. It doesn't sound like she has a ton of money banked up.
Nope.
So how is she going to run away and leave her car behind, not take any of the money that's in the bank account, deposit $300 into the bank account? I'm always skeptic on everything. I always say that, but I have no idea how police would even come to that conclusion to think this is probably a thing that happened.
Yeah, and it's not like, I feel like we talk about a lot of significantly older cases on this show.
Right, this is 99.
Yeah, this is 99. This is not 1977. This is a more modern era, a more modern time frame. You've got surveillance footage. You've got these things that you can see. It just blew my mind seeing them saying, oh, she's a grown woman, she can just leave. She has none of the risk factors for that.
Right.
None of it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, I mean, outside of her daughters, her family is all local. She works with her family. She relieves her mother from her second shift job, every night, essentially. There's nothing that I've seen that would have made me think that she would be running away. And the only thought that crosses my mind is that's the easy way out of having to investigate something. Yeah. To just be like, oh, somebody took it upon themselves and they ran away. So really there's no crime here, so we don't have to investigate anything. Versus, okay, this is really weird. She was last seen here. As we go forward, it looks like she was supposed to go get groceries. She was supposed to come back. Maybe she was getting groceries, or maybe she did regularly shop at Y's grocery store. Isn't that weird that we find her car there later on, 2 days later or 3 days later? It just doesn't add up.
Yeah. So, and clearly her family didn't agree with the way the investigation was going. Her father told the Evening Sun, quote, police said she was just gone for the weekend. They think she's 45 years old and she wants to go on a weekend fling, end quote.
Yeah. It's,
I'm like, yeah, I completely agree with her dad there.
With who? Friends? Did they talk to friends? Who would she go on a weekend fling with?
Yeah, that's the question.
By herself or with some secret lover?
Yeah, it just
You're
didn't
grasping
make
at
sense.
straws. It's not based on reality. It's we talk about these things when you start theorizing on cases or you're trying to piece things together because it's an unsolved case. But what are the facts and evidence that you're using to support that idea?
Yeah.
And I don't think there are any.
So you are of the exact same belief as the family, and they had a really hard time dealing with the Conewago Township PD. They felt as though Diane's case wasn't being taken seriously. But the main thing that seemed to be the sticking point for them, or the biggest gripe the family had with the current investigating agency, was the fact that the car had a lack of attention. They didn't take it in, they didn't dust it for fingerprints, there were no samples taken, and they just let Bonnie take the car and go. I mean, that was a huge concern, and I completely understand where they're coming from. But either way, because of the family's opposition to the Conewago Township PD, it actually pushed them to have the case transferred over to the Pennsylvania State Police, literally within 5 days of the start of their missing persons investigation. But even with the family's frustrations, the Conewago Township PD, along with the state police, felt as though there was really nothing wrong with their initial investigation.
Yeah, that's not good.
So listen to these quotes. Let me tell you these. So the chief of the Conewago Township PD at the time, David Williams, told the Evening Sun, quote, "It's been handed over to state police and they were very impressed with the work we did on it," end quote. And to further that statement, the detective with the state police that was assigned to the case back in 99, Chris Whitmoyer, also told the Evening Sun, quote, "The township had done a thorough investigation into the case. The family was unhappy with the way things were going, so the township handed it over to us," end quote.
It's tough without having all the facts of everything on both sides in front of you, because the articles that you read, they could take a particular bias to the family's side or to the police's side or whatever. But just from the basis of like what I know and what I know was not done, it in no way seems like it was a thorough investigation. Just because of the vehicle. So the parents and the family were hung up on the lack of attention to the vehicle. Just from that, you can gain so much information from there. At a super basic level, without going super in depth, you think about the position of the seat. We've talked about it with Jennifer Kessie's case.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things, like say police respond out to an accident and say it was a single car accident, whatever, a stolen vehicle or something. One of the things that you look for is the position of the seat. That way you can kind of judge the size of the person that was driving it, because if the registered owner of the vehicle is a woman that's 5'2", and the seat is all the way back, it's probably, you know, somebody that was 6 foot something that was driving the car. So it just doesn't add up. Super basic stuff can be found from the inside of the vehicle that can help direct your investigation. At least it may not give you a ton of clues, but it'll give you some insight into, okay, if Diane was, again, like 5'3", 5'4", whatever.
She's 5'6".
Okay, so she was 5'6", and the seat was all the way back, and it was probably, you know, an adult male that was driving it, maybe 6 foot something. You know that she wasn't driving the car when it was dropped off.
Yes, exactly. So that was one of the next points I was going to get into, was that after the investigation was handed over to the state police, it does appear as though they did complete a dusting of the car for fingerprints. I'm not sure what other types of like forensic tests they may have done on the car, but it seems as though nothing of note came from anything that they did once the car was processed, once they had it in their possession.
Well, unfortunately, it had been stored wherever by that point, and you had the sister driving the car. So,
I mean, if anything, they were really hung up on that, though, so I'm sure if they were pushing to get it moved to state police, they were probably like, don't touch this thing, let's keep it as good as we can. But of course, it's still that like chain of custody thing that would be an issue.
Yeah, and just to go back to the picture of the vehicle that you sent, it looks like it was stored in a garage.
Yes.
So it very well could have been stored at a family member's garage and not touched.
Yeah.
Parked there and just left there specifically for that reason, where they were like, hey, this needs to be processed. So if somebody doesn't do it soon enough, then at least if we keep it here, it's untouched and it's uncontaminated from most elements, and then police might be able to gather something from it later.
Yeah. As things progressed, authorities did actually receive some leads regarding potential sightings of Diane. As of the time that Diane went missing, she was described as being 5 foot 6 inches tall, 180 pounds, with brown eyes and brownish reddish hair. She wore glasses, had a purple rose tattoo on her left ankle, and she had 3 ear piercings in each of her ears. So one of these sightings was given from a man who supposedly knew Diane, and the sighting was in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which was approximately 14 miles or a 27-minute drive from Hanover, Pennsylvania. This alleged sighting was on the morning of February 1st, 1999, the day Diane's car had been found in the Wise Market parking lot, which already is a bit odd considering it's believed that the car was placed in the lot at least sometime around or before 4 a.m., literally a day before that. But regardless, it seems as though police were not able to substantiate this alleged sighting.
How far away was Gettysburg?
A little under a half hour drive.
Okay, so it's not like it was hours away, so she could have been seen there.
But I believe this sighting was of her in her own car.
She could have been seen there. I don't think she was. I mean...
Yeah, but on the morning that the car is found, do you actually think that she could have potentially dropped off the car that morning and then, like, just barely missed Bonnie when she found the car, or...
So you're saying that the sighting had her in the vehicle?
Yeah.
And it was the morning of when the vehicle was found?
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes no sense.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't make any sense. If the car's in the Wise Market parking lot, how could she be 30 minutes away in Gettysburg in the car?
Doesn't really jive because the car would have had to been left at Wise for a while because it was frosted over, so...
Yeah, and they were saying that the car was supposedly there at least from 4 a.m. Sunday morning. So that's over 24 hours before Bonnie found it.
Yeah, because somebody that was working at Wise saw it on Sunday.
Yes. And there was actually one additional sighting about a month after Diane had disappeared that I saw reported on a little bit, but this time it was in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, which was almost 40 miles or over an hour drive from Hanover. But again, nothing came of this sighting either.
So the people that are coming forward saying that they saw Diane, are they giving any distinguishing characteristics like the purple rose tattoo or anything like that?
Not that I can tell. It seems like it was, we got a potential sighting and we couldn't substantiate it. And I don't know if these were just people calling in saying, I saw someone that looked like her, or if it was legitimately, I saw this tattoo. She was wearing glasses. She definitely weighed this much and she was this tall and like all these things. It doesn't seem that way. It wasn't reported that specifically, but it seems like they weren't really taken too seriously. Like they didn't think it was an actual verifiable sighting. So as time went on and authorities continued to try and uncover any additional information that may lead them to where Diane was, they continued to hit brick wall after brick wall with no breaks in the case whatsoever. And from the very beginning, police didn't seem to believe that there was anything nefarious at play, like I previously mentioned. And a year into the investigation, authorities told the Evening Sun, quote, "There are no signs of anything suspicious," end quote. This article goes on to state, quote, "Whitmoyer said police have been unable to substantiate the whereabouts of Wolf after the bank, and they don't know how the car wound up at the grocery store," end quote. So it seems as though at least a year into this investigation, they've gotten nowhere. There are really no answers to any piece to the puzzle. But I think the thing that frustrates me the most is the fact that he's saying there are no signs of anything suspicious, because I feel like all of this seems really suspicious.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seems very suspicious that this lady would just uproot and leave her life behind. I mean, we already talked about it before that we don't think that's what happened. So the only other way is that somebody abducted her and she's endangered. Exactly.
So there's actually something else interesting that comes out around the 1-year anniversary of Diane's disappearance that might make you question even more why police aren't concerned that something terrible might have happened to Diane. It's discovered that a little less than a week before she vanished, she'd had a concerning conversation with her mother. The conversation was about the fact that she didn't have a written will, and she was worried about what might happen to her 2 kids if something ever happened to her. Now, based on all the sources I've found that cover this tidbit of information, they all say that Shirley, Diane's mom, was able to calm her down and talk her off the ledge about the whole will situation. But nothing else is really said about the will, what Diane thought could happen to her, or if she thought someone was out to get her. I don't think in the moment that her mother was all too concerned about Diane's freak out, as it doesn't appear as though she pried too much to find out any more information. And I mean, I don't necessarily blame her for not being super concerned. She probably thought she was just having like an anxious moment. Like now her daughter is having twins and she's concerned, like, how will she be taken care of if something happens to me? Like, we all have anxious thoughts. So I think that's probably what her mom was thinking. But now I'm sure at this point, now that she's missing, they must be thinking, oh my God, she was concerned about this will. Did she think that somebody was out to get her?
Yeah, either that or did she have any medical problems?
It doesn't seem that way, no, but that's a good question. It might be something that's just never been talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does seem strange, though. It coincides. I mean, we talk about correlation and causation and shit like that, but it is odd that just a short time before she goes missing, she's talking to her mom about how she's worried about a will.
Mm-hmm.
It is ironic that she was just talking about it, and now all of a sudden, it has become a problem.
Yeah,
type of thing,
what are the odds?
Right. So
she had to be concerned about something, and for probably good reason.
I could go either way on that. Sure, it could be that she thought somebody was out to get her, or it could have also been like, a midlife crisis type thing where she's worried about her family and if something would have happened to her. I mean, her husband died of a heart attack.
Yeah, so she could be thinking now, I just want to make sure that everybody's going to be taken care of. Who knows? Maybe she had some health thing going on and nobody knew about it. Maybe she hadn't relayed that information. I mean, a lot of people go and potentially get diagnosed with a really horrible disease or cancer or something and then just keep it to themselves for a little while until they're ready to tell family. Mm-hmm. What if that happened here and she was concerned at this point and then all of a sudden something happens?
Right, and just because it correlated with her asking about this will, it doesn't mean that she was talking about it because somebody was out to get her.
Yes.
So
it's a good point. So another year goes by with not much information reported on in Diane's case. However, around the 2-year anniversary, there's another article published in the Evening Sun, kind of like a yearly anniversary recap, a re-interview with police, that kind of thing. Well, in this particular piece, another detective, Sergeant Wade Lauer, stated, quote, "Maybe people who were reluctant to talk at the time may come forward now. Sometimes people don't recognize the fact that what they witnessed or what they may know is important," end quote. And just based on that and additional information in the article, it seems as though police were a bit more focused on trying to find answers now in Diane's case. But again, there really isn't anything else that comes out.
I think a lot of times people are reluctant, even if there's no malicious intent in them keeping something quiet. I think that a lot of times we're dismissive of like, oh, I saw something, but could what I saw really be anything or really mean anything? And you're kind of dismissive of
Is it going to further anything, help with anything, or am I just going to be a nuisance?
Right, you're dismissive of your own thoughts because you're already second guessing like what I saw couldn't have anything of value to police.
Yeah.
But also I think that people don't want to get involved either because we've all seen how that can go awry sometimes where
like in Jane Pritchard's case.
In Jane Pritchard's case where this guy comes forward right away when police are asking for help. Right, and he gets jammed up for years.
Yeah, that's rough. So I can understand both sides of it. Now, let's fast forward a little bit in the timeline to about 4 years later. So this is 7 years after Diane Wolf was last seen, and she was going to be declared legally dead. For years now, Merle Wolf had to deal with all of the assets left behind, and many of them were in both he and his missing wife's name. And because of that, he was having issues with some legal affairs with his property, their cars, and other things. So the best way to be able to handle those was to declare her legally deceased.
But it's also an easy way out to be like, oh, my wife's missing for all this time, and I'm having all these legal problems. The only way to really further anything is to declare her dead.
It's funny you say that because that's exactly how I felt when I first saw this. I was like, did he just wait till that 7-year mark? Because that's at the time, the law said that the person has to have been missing and there had to be enough evidence to say, yeah, it seems like they are no longer alive for a judge to be able to pass this motion.
Right, you have to hit a threshold of probably a certain time period and a certain amount of evidence in order to say, yes, we can declare them legally dead now, and then you can use the death certificate or whatever to fix whatever legal issues that you have.
Yeah, so you can say, okay, here's the death certificate. Now I need to get the house in my name, the car in my name, the life insurance, all these things. So at first, I was like, did he just do that because it's like, oh, no one's going to look at me and all this
long-term
stuff.
investment.
Yeah, so it was like,
oh, if I kill my wife now in 7 years, I'll be able to get the house, I'll be able to get this, I'll be able to get that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, was any of this stuff Merle's, or did Merle move in with Diane?
That's a great question, and I do not have the answer to it. But I will say, Merle was ruled out from the very beginning. Authorities apparently looked into him. They were satisfied with whatever he told them, whatever sort of alibi he may have had. I don't know if he was at work. I don't know where he was. There has really not been anything reported on what he was doing, why his alibi seemed strong enough, all of this. But it has been stated, we looked into the husband and we ruled him out from the start by authorities.
So essentially, based on what we know authorities have done and have not done, they went to Merle and they said, hey, did you kill your wife? And he said no, and they were all set with it.
I mean, based on the fact that they didn't process the car and all these other things,
right?
That's definitely possible.
I mean, I'm obviously being facetious, but
yeah.
When a wife dies or when a wife goes missing and stuff, who do you look at first? You look at the husband.
Of course, yeah, that's right where your mind goes, and that's right where my mind went. So it was like, oh, okay, so he was ruled out from the start.
And he doesn't report her missing for like 36 hours.
Well, it was like the whole...
I haven't seen her for quite some time.
Yeah, and that's my question. What is quite some time to you? Is like, 36 hours sketchy or is 3 hours sketchy? Because I'm sure if you didn't hear from me for 3 hours and I was supposed to just be going to get gas or something, you would be like, where the fuck is my wife? Like, you would be very concerned if you couldn't get in touch with me. So,
obviously, we live in a much more connected world now than we did in 99.
Hey, she still had a cell phone and he could get in touch with her.
So would Merle, if he was involved in it, would he be the type to, put the car in that parking lot so the family would find it?
If that's the reason.
If that's the reason, right. But again, we've said, all we've alluded to or all we have to work with is that police have said,
it's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence that it was put there. I'm still a believer that it was because she was probably abducted from that spot, and then the vehicle was returned to that spot.
I will say, there were never any sightings of her at that store, though. No one ever saw her there. And we know that we only have the verified sighting of her at the bank. I don't know if there was surveillance footage, if authorities checked that, but it has never been stated that she was at the Wise Market.
Sure. So if it's never been stated, and you have to assume that her plan was to go to the bank, deposit the money, and then go get groceries. And she went missing after the bank. You have to assume that she probably went to get groceries because that's the last time her vehicle would stop, because she'd leave the bank and then make the next stop at groceries. So most likely, the grocery store would be the next time she would get out of her car.
Yeah.
And if she were to be getting groceries, would this have been the most likely place that she would get groceries at?
Yeah.
From what I know, yes. So that's where I'm making the link. Okay, this was most likely her next stop. She was probably abducted from here, and whoever abducted her probably returned the vehicle to where they took her from.
Yeah.
Just to not separate the link of where she was abducted from and where the vehicle was later found.
Yeah, I totally see what you're saying there, and it makes sense. I wonder if that's something that police might know more about then.
That could be what police are saying. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not a coincidence that we found the vehicle here because, hey, she was abducted from here.
Yeah.
So that could be it. It could have nothing to do with the person wanting the family to find it.
Yeah.
The person that did this could have had nothing to do with the family. Didn't even know that her sister worked there.
Yeah.
And if she was the type that was going to park right near the entrance to the supermarket, maybe nobody was around because it was still early in the morning. It was like 8 o'clock on a weekday, right? So maybe not everybody's out doing their grocery shopping.
Yep.
Could have been a perfect time to try and abduct somebody. And then if they take her from there and they're going to return the vehicle there, they're going to park it as far away from the business as possible because that's the easiest way out of that lot.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I think it was just funny that everyone was saying, like, Diane wasn't like this. Diane wasn't like this. And
yeah, Diane wasn't dropping the fucking car off.
Diane didn't do it. Diane did not leave the fucking car there.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah. So
we're going on a rant a little bit here.
Yeah, about Merle. Yeah, we're going on a rant about Merle.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that. So obviously at this point we know that police have ruled him out and now he is working towards declaring his wife legally dead. So in an article in the Evening Sun in June 2006, it stated, quote, "He can't do anything with those assets because no one can locate his wife. The only way to move forward and clear up life choices he has to face, he has to come to a decision as to whether she's alive," end quote. Now, there are a few articles published in 2006 that covered the proceedings that took place. Two of the biggest takeaways that I got from this was, one, Merle Wolf testified to the fact that the couple had no marital issues. Well, none of note at least, and nothing serious enough to warrant Diane running away. And two, investigators still had literally nothing. In terms of their investigation, the detective working the missing persons case stated, quote, "There is no current information on her whereabouts. At this point, there is no investigation. There's nothing to actively follow up on," end quote. The judge did end up granting the motion, though, and declared Diane Wolf legally deceased with her date of death being listed as January 30th, 2006. Now, we're going to fast forward again, this time about a year, and we're going to talk about something that I feel like we cover in nearly every frickin' episode on this show. But before we dive into that, I do just want you to know that at this point, some of Diane's family still had hope, most notably her mother. Yes, Diane's been legally declared deceased. No, there's literally no leads and nothing for authorities to work. But her parents and siblings didn't know for sure if Diane was dead. She could still be alive, and these members of her family did still have hope that she might be. An article in the Evening Sun stated, quote, "Maybe someone is holding Wolf against her will," Althoff said. Regardless, Althoff remains hopeful she'll hear from her daughter again, end quote. So back to the thing that I said we talk about all the time. several of Diane's family members traveled to attend a Montel Williams show after being selected after they put their names on a waiting list. They were going to be able to meet and speak to a psychic during the show. There's a passage in an Evening Sun article from 2006 that gives a brief rundown of the whole scenario, and I want to read it to you because I think it packs a punch. The article stated, quote, "In April, they got the call to be on the show. Althoff and 3 of her children went to New York. Althoff was chosen to ask psychic Sylvia Brown a question. 'Sylvia, could you tell me where my daughter might be?' she asked. Without any hesitation, Althoff said that Brown answered, 'Omaha, Nebraska.' Althoff was shocked. Why would Diane be in Omaha? She didn't know anyone out there." End quote.
That's, so this wasn't like they were going on Montel Williams. They were going to be like, not like a panelist, but they weren't up on stage with him.
No.
So this was a Sylvia Brown episode. And then they were like picking on people from the crowd.
Yeah.
Prearranged and pre-selected.
Most likely.
To ask a specific question.
Yeah. So does that not feel incredibly fucking staged?
Oh, totally disingenuous. Absolutely.
Like, are you going to tell this grieving family, like, oh my God, it was so horrible. I was watching a couple news clips on this. Her poor sister. Like, you saw a clip of her back in 99 when she first went missing, and more recently, 2014, 2018, and she is still so emotional over the fact that her sister's gone. Mm-hmm. And this person's just going to stand up on stage to get good TV ratings and say, oh yeah, she's in Omaha, Nebraska. Like, where the fuck did you pull that one from, lady?
I don't know.
Oh, it made me so angry when I read that. I was like, that is just fucking cruel. It is cruel.
And to ask that question, can you tell me where my daughter is? And to just be like, Omaha, Nebraska, to not ask, well, who's your daughter? Where did she disappear from? Mm-hmm. Give me more information. It's just like, my dog ran away. Can you tell me where my dog is? Is in Puerto Rico.
Right,
it's like,
exactly.
What the fuck? How's my dog in Puerto Rico right now?
It just doesn't make sense. Like, of course, and poor Shirley, her mom, it's like, of course she's going to think, why would Diane be in Omaha, Nebraska? But when you have that hope and you're
and now
there,
you're sending him on that journey. But now the mother is like, oh, now you're going to send me on that journey. I need to go into Omaha, Nebraska. Mm-hmm. You think that they're not going to want to follow that up because they're like, even if this means nothing, and even if there is no validity to what this psychic said, what if I don't follow up on it and it turns out she was in Omaha, Nebraska?
Exactly. And that is just what made me so mad is, like, you're just capitalizing on people's grief.
Right.
And that is the worst possible thing to do in not only these situations, but this, like, true crime world. It's just so messed up. And just knowing that, like, this is a TV show, this is a taping, everyone probably is pre-selected. Like, they probably know the questions to ask or the answer to give. And it's like,
that's what this Montel Williams and Ricky Lake and all this stuff in the 90s, that's what it was. It was sensationalized TV that was partially scripted, that they could bring people out. They had a general idea of what was going on, but then they just kind of lit the match and set flame to everything and just let it go. And
pick a different topic then.
I agree.
Not someone who's potentially murdered or
missing or whatever.
All these other things. Like, pick a different topic that's not that cruel.
Right.
It's just disgusting.
Like, oh, my grandmother passed away and I spent a lot of time with her. Yeah. I want to know that she's all right, or I want to know that she's doing okay, that she's watching over me. Yeah. That's like a spiritual connection type thing where this family is still trying to find this lady, their daughter.
To just throw out a random town like that? Ugh, horrible.
So did anything come of Omaha, Nebraska?
Doesn't seem that way, no. The family did give the information to police, but from what I can tell, there's never been any information on it.
I mean, that's giving people such a wide swath of an area. Yeah. Omaha, Nebraska. Think of how many fields are in Nebraska. The whole fucking state's a field. How would you ever narrow anything down there?
Yeah, and this is just a baseless claim. Like, where are you gathering this information from? You just pulled it out of your ass and gave them a random town. Like, I'm sure the police are like, okay, we'll look into it because the family wants us to, but it's like,
how do you look into it?
What do you do?
Right.
Like, do you just call Omaha, Nebraska? Hi, do you know a Diane Wolf? Like,
or hi, have you seen this lady or anything like that? Or do you start looking? How can you even start looking for anything there? You can't.
You can't.
I mean, it's a flyover state for a reason. There's nothing there. So how are you going to go and find anything? I could see it if it was like, oh, she's in Bristol, Connecticut.
Or what if it was in, like, Chambersburg, Pennsylvania? a town an hour away where she was supposedly seen. Like that, police could say, oh, we had an alleged sighting there, and now the psychic's saying this. That's a valuable lead to be worked.
Right.
What do you have to say Nebraska's my place to look now?
Right.
Such bullshit. Okay, so at this point, we're going to fast forward again, this time to the 10-year anniversary of Diane's disappearance. Now, after a decade of no answers, authorities decided it was time to re-look at her case again, and it was assigned to a new detective. Authorities would plan to start re-interviewing people and re-reviewing their case files. Detective Scott Denish of the Pennsylvania State Police at Gettysburg was the lead detective when the case was reopened and, from what I can tell, is still working the case today. But basically, at this point, around 2009, 2010, the investigation was getting serious again. And now, in a wild turn of events, authorities were now confident that Diane was a victim of foul play.
No shit.
And they were treating her disappearance as a crime now, which is the complete and total opposite of what was previously believed by police.
Sad that it took 10 years to come to the realization of, what we could guess from the very beginning.
10 years and a new detective.
I know, 10 years and a new detective, but still, you gather a little bit of information, you talk to the family, you talk to the husband, you talk to coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
No, she doesn't look like the type of person that would run away. There's no evidence to support that.
Yep.
Let's look into it as a crime.
Exactly.
Not 10 years later. Like, even if we abide by the standard that's been used so many times in some of the older cases that we have, 24 hours. You got to wait 24 hours.
Yes.
Okay, well.
She was reported missing after 36. Let's get started.
Exactly.
So after the investigation was reinvigorated, not too much came out at first, but things started to ramp up again between 2014 and 2018. And there were several interesting tidbits of information released to the public that absolutely make sense as to why investigators were now under the assumption that Diane met with foul play. And it kind of also helps us to lead into theories in this case, because at this point, we really haven't had too much to go off of to make any assumptions on what happened.
Right, outside of the idea that Merle had anything to do with this, but it sounds like police had ruled him out right off the bat, so or at least very early on, so outside of that, it doesn't seem like there's any type of good leads to turn into a theory.
Yes. So, first things first. It's been stated that Diane was allegedly having extramarital affairs with coworkers of hers at Hanover Foods. It's entirely unclear who these supposed affairs were with, how many coworkers may have been involved, and when or where they occurred. But we do know that Merle, Diane's husband, had said that they had no issues in their marriage. So either he didn't know about these affairs, or maybe he didn't care?
Or maybe he lied about it because he didn't want to implicate himself, saying that I knew that my wife was having an affair, because that would give him an MO to go after his wife.
Very possible, and I think it would have been an interesting question to ask him, but unfortunately, Merle passed away in 2012.
So I gotta say, I was already skeptical about police ruling him out early on because they didn't conduct a very thorough investigation from the start. And also now we know that they weren't investigating it as a crime.
Yeah.
So even if they did a thorough investigation into a missing persons, but they weren't looking at it through the lens of, oh, this is a crime where, foul play may be afoot, then they didn't ask him the questions needed to really rule him out as somebody that could have done something nefarious. So, of course, he's dead now, but I personally hadn't ruled him out. I was just going off of the fact that you had said that police had ruled him out. I still had my doubts, but now, knowing that she was having an affair with other people, other coworkers, he fucking worked there. Merle was a coworker. You think that he didn't know that she was fucking somebody else?
Yeah.
Like, come on. You would be able to more easily rule him out if he said, yeah, I knew she was having an affair with so-and-so, but we're just in a comfortable living relationship and it is what it is.
With it. Yeah. Scott Denish, the current detective who took it over in 2010, he did a segment with ABC 27 in 2014, and he said that authorities did rule him out, and it seems as though he is also of the mindset that he's been ruled out. So I don't know what they have and what kind of alibi he had and all of this stuff, but it seems as though even current detectives seem relatively confident, unless they just don't want to say it because they don't have enough, but they seem confident to say that Merle's not involved. But I wonder if they waited to release this information until after he passed away, because maybe he didn't know about the affairs. And I know that's a little naive to say. He was also a coworker. He worked there. He probably did know. But what if for some reason he was totally naive and had no idea, and police were like, man, we don't want to embarrass this dude, and he's totally not involved, and they're thinking about when they're going to release more information, and then he passes away, and then 2 years later they decide to say, all right, we'll talk about the extramarital affairs now, trying to figure out what additional information they'll release. Do you think that's even something that like police would even give a shit about? Or
if the affairs had any substance or held any weight in the investigation, I don't think that they would have held something back.
Yeah.
I don't think that they would have not released it because of his feelings.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. I'm just saying, was it like the investigation was revamped in 2010? Then they see, oh, Merle passed away in 2012. That's sad. That's unfortunate. And then they're like, okay, we're still working on this investigation. We need to release some more stuff. And now they're like, well, the husband is no longer around. It doesn't feel as shitty to release this now. Maybe this is one of the pieces of information that we can now take to give to the public to maybe help give us some answers.
I guess, but I would have to know when authorities learned about the extramarital affairs. If that was something that they learned back in 99, or if that's something that they learned through a revamped investigation where they went back and they started to interview these people again, coworkers and stuff like that.
Yep.
Because if they found out about it now and police had ruled him out before, it's like if this guy if he died in 2012 and he was on his deathbed in 2011, say, when they found it out, it's like they probably had that information, but maybe they didn't have enough to charge him and convict him. So it was like not enough to go forward with. And maybe once he died, they could put it out. Not because it had any bearing on his feelings or what, like if he was naive to it, but more like maybe somebody knows something further.
Yeah.
And now that he's dead,
they're more
willing to come out and say, hey, he did it.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Or to say, Merle didn't know about this affair that I had back then. I didn't want to come forward. Like maybe they didn't know who the affairs were with, but they knew that there were affairs going on. And then whoever she had an affair with was like, oh, I'll come forward now. I feel more comfortable because Merle's no longer around, and be like worried about like potential backlash. Yes, years later, but still backlash. And then
I think I need to know more about when they found this information out to decide whether or not they withheld it for all this time and just never released it versus it's something new that they came into and they didn't have enough to go along with that to substantiate going forward with charges or something like that.
I have a feeling, and this is just a feeling, this is totally me speculating, but in a couple of the articles regarding the people that were talked to at Wise Market about when the car was there, it wasn't police that talked to those people. It was Bonnie and like family members that asked, like, when did you see the car? So did authorities not even talk to anyone at Hanover Foods then? And maybe this was something that came out way later.
I have to assume that it was something that came out way later, because if you are the initial investigators and you have this woman that went missing, her family's like, no, there's no way that she would have ran away, this, that, and the other thing. And then you talk to the husband, oh, I haven't seen her in quite some time. No, we had no marital problems. And then you find out that, oh, they indeed probably did have marital problems because this lady was having extramarital affairs behind his back. He didn't know about it. It was with coworkers. He could have found out later on and snapped. Then at that point, you have enough. Well, you have to say, this could be a crime, not a missing woman, not a person that ran away. So if I had to guess, it had to be something that came out later.
Yeah.
I wonder what other theories there are outside of this one.
So let's keep going. Apparently, one of the couples that worked at Hanover Foods, that I believe one of them must have been involved in this whole affair situation with Diane, actually threatened her at some point. But authorities did look into these two individuals, and they were totally ruled out of being involved, as they didn't even live in the state of Pennsylvania at the time of Diane's disappearance. And I guess there was also another female employee of Hanover Foods that had allegedly been harassing Diane. And I did see it mentioned that Diane changed her phone number because of this supposed harassment, and this bit of information was reported in a news segment with ABC 27.
Do we know why she was being harassed?
I can only imagine maybe it was something to do with an affair that was going on.
Could it have been something to do with this person harassing her that wanted Merle?
I mean, maybe,
Could it have gone both ways? Or was this person another couple?
No, so there was a couple and then there was a female coworker. And I don't know if the female coworker had an issue with maybe Diane having an affair with someone that maybe she liked, or I don't know.
Well, if that was the case and there was this female that was harassing her for whatever reason, if it had something to do with an affair that was going on, do you really think that this lady would harass her and have the easy opportunity to just go tell Merle what was happening?
True. Yeah.
Can you really say that Merle wouldn't know what was going on? Like, if this lady was ball busting enough to be harassing Diane all this time about whatever was going on, if that's what the harassment was stemming from, was some type of affair, do we really think that Merle had no idea about it?
Merle had to know. I was just trying to play devil's advocate and give him the fucking benefit of the doubt, but here I am just going back to what I originally thought when I first started investigating this case.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you think immediately, you say, oh, I haven't seen my wife in 36 hours.
Yeah.
Why did it take you 36 hours to report it?
Why didn't police ask that question? Did they ask that question? You don't know.
Right. Obviously, if you're working different schedules, things can line up to where, you know, one person's leaving for work, the other one's coming back from work, and you don't see each other until the other one gets back from work. Like, you can go a full day probably without seeing someone, but to not be in contact or to not know where they are and to not know that they were home at a certain point. Did she come back home to sleep and the bed was a mess or whatever? There are a lot of other factors that can go into narrowing down, like when was the last time she was in the house type deal.
Yeah, exactly. But I think even with us going over this over and over again, this whole female coworker situation was ruled out as well. So it doesn't matter. She was ruled out. Apparently she had no involvement. So from there, something else interesting comes up. Apparently, there was what's been described as a hotel card left on Diane's nightstand that had a phone number written on the back of it. I'll actually put up a picture of this as well on our socials if you want to take a look, but the side with the phone number on it has never been released. So authorities did track down the number that was on the back of the card, and it came back to some dude from Maryland. Authorities got in touch with him, asked him if he knew Diane or why she might have his number, but the number that was on this hotel card wasn't even his phone number. It was apparently an old fax number of his, at least according to this guy anyway. And he said he had no idea who Diane was, why she'd have his fax number, or anything like that. I think it could be one of two things here. Either this guy from Maryland is totally lying, or maybe Diane just took down a phone number wrong.
I guess.
But it's a little sketchy.
Say we were mysteriously rendezvousing. You know, we were in an affair.
Yeah.
And we have our other partners or whatever. If I'm giving you a card to get into my hotel room, I'm going to be the one that writes the number down.
It's not a key card.
Oh, okay.
You want to see what this looks like.
Okay. Interesting. I was thinking it was like a credit card.
It's literally for traveler safety tips.
Oh, that is not what I thought.
Yeah.
This looks like something that you'd hang on the outside of the door, like a do not disturb type thing.
Yeah, it's just traveler safety tips, though. Like, why would she have that?
Oh, my God. At the bottom of it, right?
Take a bite out of crime.
Scruff, McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652.
Yeah.
Help take a bite out of crime.
I think it says, like, American Association something. Like, I can't tell what it says in the top right-hand corner, like, if this is for a specific hotel.
Yeah, maybe American Hotel Association, it looks like. You might say hotel there.
Yeah. So it just seems like a generic.
Okay, I thought this was a key card to get into the hotel room.
No.
That's why I was saying if I was giving you a card to get into the hotel room, I would have written my own number down or something like that. So.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. But, like, why did she write it down on this traveler safety tips card? And why did she keep it? And why was it supposedly a fax number? Like, all of it is just weird.
Who knows? This could have been some random scrap paper that she had in the car from mail, and she just needed to take down a number.
But why do they keep calling it a hotel card?
Because it's from the American Hotel Association, it looks like.
I mean, I guess. It's just weird.
It is weird, yeah. I would like to know what's on the other side of it.
The other side of it is at least the phone number.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, maybe she had a trip to Omaha, Nebraska set.
Give me a fucking break.
But, yeah, that's weird. And then the fact that it's a fax number. And this guy had no idea who she was or anything.
Yeah, so the thing that's interesting about this is I'm pretty sure this was found early on. And I think this was initially investigated early on.
well, if this was found early on, this could be one of the pieces of evidence that police were like, yeah, she ran away. She went on a weekend rendezvous.
Well, yeah, so maybe that is one of the reasons why they believe that. But again, if she went on a weekend rendezvous, why would the traveler card be back at her fucking home? That makes no sense.
It was found at her home?
Yeah, it was on her nightstand.
Yeah, that's strange.
So all of it just doesn't add up. But the thing that makes me believe that this was investigated early on, this guy was ruled out, by the way. Authorities probably did the whole, hey, did you know Diane Wolf? And he said no, and they were like, okay.
I wanted to interject real quick because of why this could have been back at her house, is maybe she went to a travel agency and they prepared whatever her arrangements were going to be, and this was part of the paperwork that she came home with. And they had given her a phone number and she wrote it down, but she wrote down the wrong number on the back of it. And then when she went home, she had that set there, and maybe that's why police thought that she was leaving to go on some type of weekend getaway or something like that, because there was travel paraphernalia in the house somewhere.
I see what you're saying, but also, why is it so fucking dirty?
Yeah, it is dirty. It looks like somebody changed their oil and wiped their hands on it.
Yeah, it really does. Like, you can barely read half of it. So it's like, did she have this from a long time ago and it was in the car and she scribbled down a number on it and then brought it inside? I don't know. I think we're getting like really deep into it, but either way, Detective Denish, who had taken over the case, told the Evening Sun, quote, "A few years ago, we tracked him down again while he was living in York. He said he never talked to police and again denied ever seeing Wolf. Investigators planned to re-interview the man, but he got a lawyer and left the area," end quote.
That's a little suspicious.
Yeah, so I was going to say that could be suspicious, or it could be along the lines of this guy's like, please leave me alone and I'm going to get a lawyer so you actually leave me alone because I don't want to get involved in this. So I think it could be either way you look at it. He could be suspicious or he could be like, I don't want to fucking deal with you guys. Leave me be.
So if this guy was originally from Maryland, but now police are saying they tracked him down in York, is that York, Pennsylvania?
I think so.
So he had some type of connection to the Pennsylvania area. So he could have been around during the time of her disappearance.
Yeah, there's no York, Maryland, so...
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's York, Pennsylvania, so he would have to be in Pennsylvania then.
Yeah.
So he had to have had ties to that area.
Yeah, right.
It's odd.
It is odd. And I think that if investigators don't have a whole lot to go on, him getting the lawyer just gives like a hard stop to say, hey, you're not just going to fuck with me because you got to go through the lawyer type thing. But he could still be a person of interest because now if he does have connections to the Pennsylvania area...
Yep.
Who knows how solid his alibi was? Why was this number on the back of this hotel getaway card type thing?
But then he also said, did you catch that in this quote where
he never talked to police?
He said he never talked to police.
Yeah, so
how was he ruled out in the beginning?
Right.
It's
strange.
Yeah.
Could be a miscommunication and lack of...
investigating in the beginning? Or
lack of investigating, or maybe somebody attempted to contact him and had negative results and they... misreported it in their report.
Yeah, maybe.
Just so they wouldn't have to continue following up. I mean, they're like, oh yeah, I called this. I talked to this guy. He said he doesn't know who it is, blah, blah, blah.
I've seen worse happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So based on that ABC 27 news segment done on Diane's case in 2014, authorities said they previously had persons of interest and administered polygraph tests and had even gone as far as executing various search warrants. But the detective working the case has said that literally nothing has panned out and they still end up empty and they have literally not one single thing to lead them to where Diane might be. So this kind of brings us to the point where we now need to kind of narrow down and figure out exactly what we think might have happened. First of all, I think it is pretty obvious that foul play is involved here, and I also think that she might have known who did this and they were familiar with the Pennsylvania area.
I agree with you. I think... in my opinion, Merle is still my prime suspect.
Yep.
Reasons being, it had been some time since he had last seen his wife. He didn't seem overly concerned. We later find out that his wife was having extramarital affairs, or allegedly was having extramarital affairs. When he was questioned by police, he said they had no marital problems whatsoever.
He testified to that too.
Right. He testified that they had no issues. 7 years after her disappearance, he was quick on the go to rule her legally dead. That way he could claim whatever assets they owned as a couple as his own. He knew what her schedule was. He knew that she was going to be going to the bank and then going to get groceries.
Yep.
I'm sure he knew where she was going to be going to get groceries. there's nothing outside of maybe this rendezvous with the other guy. I mean, this hotel card could have been because she was having extramarital affairs with her coworkers and they went to this hotel to bang. So this other guy that got the lawyer, I'd need a lot more to start linking him to anything. Like, sure, the phone number, whatever. People can transpose numbers on phone numbers and stuff like that. But with all the stuff that we have and knowing that you always need to look at the significant other first, you want to start with the inner circle of people when they go missing or when they're killed and stuff like that. Out of everything that we've learned today, Merle is still the guy that I want to put under a microscope and really pick apart his story, his alibi. Where was he? Why did it take so long to report your wife missing? You know, when was the last time you saw her? Were you there when she came home after work before she went out to the bank? Things like that to really look for the inconsistencies in his story, if there are any. And then if, you know, after he's under that microscope for X amount of time, you can rule him out, then move on to something else. But
what do you think about, like, the quarries, though, and the dirt and the dust on her car, and the fact that, like, I would assume that the couple probably each had their own cars, so Merle probably had his own. I wonder if police, like, looked at his car. Like, was he anywhere around there? But then the other thing that I think about, too, is police mentioned later on that they believe that the car had been brought somewhere remote to potentially hide something. So I think they think that Diane's body was transported in her own car, potentially to a quarry.
I was of no other
opinion on
that. No. If I had to come up with some type of scenario where Merle was the one that did this, that's what I would say. He followed her to wherever she was going. She got to the supermarket. He had an opportunity. He abducted her in her car, drove her car to the quarry area, killed her, dumped the body in the quarry, weighed it down so nobody would ever find it unless somebody actually went to look there. Then somehow at a later time get the vehicle back to the supermarket and then left from there.
I mean, it's possible, but I still, like, I don't think I can fully rule out the idea that somebody from work was also involved as well. Like, if there were already two people at work threatening her or harassing her, what kind of things could she have gotten into that maybe it was, like, harmless because she thought, like, oh, it's just an affair. Like, maybe she thought that wasn't that big of a deal. And this person's spouse or family member or whoever was, like, really scary or violent or whatever. And maybe she just got into bed, for lack of a better term, with the wrong person.
So you're saying maybe if she was having an affair with some other man at work, the wife of that person could have done something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's potential. I mean, you also don't know what kind of extramarital affairs these were. You don't know if it was with maybe another woman. And maybe the husband was like, oh, fuck that. And maybe he got angry.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in this one. I think, again, when we talk about speculation and coming up with the theory and trying to narrow down which one seems most likely, the most that you have to go on is attached to Merle.
Yeah.
You can say all these other things happened. Oh, this person was harassing her. This person was upset because of this reason, this, that, the other thing. But at the end of the day, the most information that you have is connected in some way to Merle. So you really have to do your due diligence on him to rule him out before really diving deep into these lesser likely scenarios.
Yeah, I think I'm curious, like, what Diane's children feel regarding Merle and that whole situation, because obviously it's their stepfather, and
they never came forward and put out any type of statements.
They did. They talked to a couple different reporters. Like, there were articles back between, like, 5 and 10 years, and then there were also more recent ones done. Like, her son came forward and spoke to reporters for, I think it was Fox 43 News, and he did an interview with them. But a lot of it was just about, like, how things were at the time. But, like, Corey even testified at the proceedings for declaring his mom legally deceased. And, you know, he was a little bit concerned regarding the whole will conversation and wishes that he could go back and, like, find out more information about that. But I mean, now I don't know what his feelings are on Merle.
Well, what if Diane was worried about Merle finding out about the affair, and that's why she had that whole conversation about the will?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible. I'm just curious, like, thinking what family might believe, because a lot of times they won't come out and say those things, and that's totally okay, and they have every right to not say that, and maybe they believe that there was something sketchy going on there. Maybe they wholeheartedly trust their stepfather and think that he's a good person and could never do it. So I think you have to look at those different things too. Like if they came out and said, well, I'm totally happy with the way that my stepfather handled everything. We feel as though there's nothing sketchy going on here. You also have to take that too when you're looking at things to say like, well, wouldn't you think like this is just their stepfather? It's not like their dad that's been around them all these years. They were, I think, between like 8 and 10 or something when they first met him. So they didn't know him all that long, but maybe he became like a really close father figure to them. And
right, but it's not like the guy in the staircase. His daughters are like, there's no way my dad did this.
Yeah, it's steadfast belief.
Right, but with this, sure, they came out and they said, oh, we're not happy with the investigation that was put forward by police early on, but we really want to know what you think as far as who did this.
Yeah, and that doesn't seem to have ever been really stated.
And I think it's important to know what they think.
I agree. It's been 23 years since Diane Wolf was last seen. She has never touched her bank accounts nor her credit cards, which her family said she used for everything. There have been no recent sightings of her, and based on what's been released, we don't really know if there are any credible leads to finding Diane or her remains, if that's where this case leads. If you know anything at all about what happened to Diane Wolf or where she might be, please contact Trooper Scott Denish with the Pennsylvania State Police at Gettysburg at 717-334-8111. Thank you all so much for tuning in every week. We're so happy to have you here. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review before you go and follow us on our socials.
You can follow us on Instagram at wicked.deeds.podcast and on Twitter at wickeddeeds. Don't forget to visit our website, wickeddeedspodcast.com, to take a look at any photos from this episode and view our source material.
But most importantly, tune in next week for an all-new episode.